In 2018, in Ashford Heights, 32-year-old Caroline McLean vanished. The last security footage of her shows her at a grocery store, calm, checking out. 40 minutes later, her car pulled into her driveway. Inside were her groceries, her phone, her wallet. But Caroline was gone. This isn't just a missing person story, because Caroline McLean hadn't just gone missing. She had vanished into thin air, leaving behind clues that would unravel one of the darkest family secrets Ashford Heights had ever seen. I'm Detective Cassandra Maddox. When mysteries whisper, I listen, exposing truths nobody else can. Today, I uncover the disappearance of Caroline McLean. Caroline lived in a quiet neighborhood, married to her husband Daniel. To her friends, she was the definition of organized, always early, always prepared. On May 12th, she was hosting a spring dinner party. The menu was written, the house ready. All she needed was one quick errand. At 5:30 p.m., she grabbed her keys and purse and headed to the store. Cameras caught her arriving around 6, calm, unhurried. By 6:40, she was checking out. That was the last confirmed sighting of Caroline McLean. At 7:15, her SUV pulled into the driveway. Groceries in the back seat, phone and wallet in the console, engine off, but no Caroline. At 7:30, her best friend Julia Harper showed up early, as she often did, to help set the table. But the house was dark, silent. The porch light was on, but inside nothing stirred. Julia texted, knocked, called, no answer. Then she noticed the SUV in the driveway, the untouched groceries, Caroline's phone and wallet still inside. Caroline never left her phone behind. That's when Daniel came home. Julia expected panic. Instead, he was annoyed, muttered that Caroline probably lost track of time. Before Julia could argue, headlights swept the street. The guests. They arrived laughing, expecting a cozy evening. Daniel slipped into host mode effortlessly, pouring wine, smiling, cracking jokes. By 9:30, the mood soured. The table was set, the food cooling on the counter, but the hostess never appeared. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. Jokes about fashionably late died halfway out. That was when Mark, Julia's husband, came in. Late, like the rules didn't apply to him, which is fine. Lateness isn't a crime, unless, of course, it's covering one up. At 9:45, Michael, one of Daniel's co-workers, finally suggested that they call the police. By 10, flashing lights painted the street. Neighbors gathered on their lawns. Inside, detectives photographed the driveway, logged the groceries, bagged her phone. They asked Daniel about his whereabouts, who could verify them, and when the last time he spoke to Caroline was. Daniel stated that he was at work, and his assistant could verify, and that the last time he spoke to his wife was before she left for the store. By midnight, the guests were gone. The house was hollow. Julia lingered at the door, and for one split second, her eyes locked with Daniel's. What she saw wasn't grief. It wasn't fear. It was something else. She broke the stare and left. At 12:07 a.m., the house pressed in too quiet. Daniel grabbed the phone, fingers moving on instinct, dialing the only number that made sense. Daniel. Her voice came soft, almost drowsy. Mom. His throat caught. It's Caroline. She's gone. A pause, short but heavy. Then warmth flooded back into her tone. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I know you're scared. He exhaled shakily. What do I do? Nothing tonight. Don't call anyone yet. Not the police, not friends. You need rest. Things feel worse in the dark. He hesitated. All right. Good. "Try to sleep, Daniel. We'll handle this in the morning." The line clicked, leaving him in silence. 2 weeks later, the case was already cooling. Caroline's car offered nothing. Her phone found inside showed no unusual calls. Cameras between the store and her home, blank. Neighbors stopped asking questions. Police stopped giving updates. To most people, Caroline wasn't missing anymore. She was dead. But Julia refused to let the silence settle. She thought of the bruises Caroline never explained, the arguments she overheard, the tension in that house long before May 12th. So when the police ran out of answers, Julia made a call of her own. Not to family, not to friends, to me. By the time I came in, the police had one story. Caroline left for groceries and never came back. End of file. But I don't start with people. People lie. In this case, cars don't. Caroline's SUV was still sitting in the driveway, processed and abandoned. Groceries gone, evidence bagged. But it didn't look right. The driver's seat? Pushed too far back. Caroline was 5'4". The tires? Too clean. Not spotless, but wiped down. Someone wanted to erase where it had been. And the detail the police brushed aside? Her phone, found neatly in the console. Too neatly. But at 9:14 p.m., 2 hours after she disappeared, it placed an outgoing call. The car was already parked in her driveway by then. The call lasted 23 seconds, long enough for silence, long enough for someone else to be listening. The number, disconnected. A burner. Tower records pinged 3 miles away, off Route 19, an industrial strip of auto yards, depots, and one dingy motel. And then, a scrap of pink ribbon caught in the glove box. Someone wanted us to believe Caroline came home, but cars don't park themselves, and they don't wipe their own tracks. I built the clock. 5:30, leaves home. 6 o'clock, grocery store. 6:40, checkout, Gap. 7:15, SUV in the driveway, groceries untouched. No Caroline. 35 minutes. That was the void. Traffic cams should have caught her. They didn't, which meant 2 things. Caroline didn't drive straight home, and someone else brought that car back. I drove her route myself. 10 minutes, straight shot. Too clean, too visible. So what about the back roads? 2 options, warehouses or woods, both camera blind. The wooded road was the kind of place people forget exists. No lights, no traffic. Half a mile in, I spotted it, a patch of gravel shoulder, flattened by years of use. Kneeling low, I found them, 2 sets of tire tracks, one fresh, one pressed underneath at an angle, like one car had boxed another in. Transfers happen fast. A stop, a struggle, silence. In the weeds at the edge of the dirt, something white caught my eye. A damp receipt. Timestamp, 6:42 p.m., May 12th, Caroline's checkout. Her night didn't end at the store. It ended here. I needed to keep following my leads, so I made my way to the motel next. The clerk took my 20 and slid me the guest log. One entry stuck out. Room 6. Paid cash. Initial only. M. I knocked. The chain rattled. A draft seeped through, carrying smoke and sweat. 2 weeks ago, a woman vanished, I said. Her phone pinged here. A laugh came back. Low, sharp, male. Then footsteps retreating. I leaned close. You can hide behind locks and burner phones, but I'll be back, and next time I won't knock. The silence that followed told me enough. Outside, the night air was sharp. That's when the headlights flared. A dark sedan eased out of the lot. The driver's face lit just enough, clean-shaven, too polished for this place. Our eyes met. He looked away too fast. I flipped open my notebook, scrawled the make and model, and underlined it twice. Because the real lead isn't always inside the room. It's the man trying to leave before you start asking questions. I slid behind my wheel and let the engine idle, watching my reflection in the windshield. Whoever he was, he wanted to disappear, which meant he was already on my list. And patterns always lead home. This one led me back to Pine Hollow Lane. Pine Hollow Lane was already awake when I got there the next morning. The neighbors circled fast. Bathrobes, rakes, pruning shears. Everyone had something to say. Caroline was careful. Caroline was distracted. Julia came by when she wasn't home. A strange car parked 2 houses down. Caroline standing in her robe at night, staring at the street like she was waiting for someone. I left them buzzing and crossed to the McLean house. Daniel answered the door. Not the polished executive from the photos. His collar was loose, his eyes tired, but he carried himself like a man who'd rehearsed grief. Contained, controlled. He let me in without a word and led me straight to Caroline's study. The study was too neat. Not lived in neat, scrubbed neat. Like someone had squared every corner and erased the mess. On the desk was a pink ribbon, frayed, folded flat, similar to the one in her car, and then buried at the bottom of a desk drawer, a note in Caroline's hand. If you're reading this, trust no one completely. Look where you least expect. I crouched, running my hand across the rug. A faint drag mark caught the light, chair legs shoved too fast, scraping the fibers. Next to it, a scuff in the wood that didn't match Daniel's shoes. Too small, too narrow, a woman's heel. My pen scratched across the page. Ribbon, note, scuff, drag marks. Then, near the lowest shelf, I ran a hand along its lip. My fingers brushed a seam, the faintest ridge of tape. I tugged it free. A slim black phone tumbled into my palm. No case, no frills, a burner. It was empty except for one number, dozens of missed calls, and a single contact, M. The texts were short, sharp, no more delays, midnight. You had time. This is the only way you stay alive. It's done. You won't be coming back. Daniel hovered in the doorway, silent. His jaw clenched when he saw the screen, but he didn't ask me to stop. He hadn't known about the phone. That much was clear. The neighbors had also whispered about Julia, and when I asked, Daniel's silence was louder than any denial. He finally muttered something about gossip, but his eyes betrayed him. There was more between them than friendly visits. Still, when I pressed harder, he gave me one truth. Julia wasn't the reason Caroline was gone. He might have been right. M is the only person who knows why she vanished, and the only one who wanted her gone before midnight. The next afternoon, I drove across town to Julia's brick townhouse. She opened the door too fast, like she'd been waiting. She poured tea, her hands wrapped tight around the cup, and I let her talk. She said Caroline canceled plans. She disappeared into herself. Julia saw bruises, sleeves tugged down too quickly, excuses about doorframes and stairs. Each time, Caroline seemed smaller, less of herself. Daniel, she said, could be sharp, controlling. He liked things his way. Caroline bent more and more to that. But Julia insisted he wasn't cruel. She wanted me to believe he loved her. Small gestures, coffee waiting, a scarf adjusted, love measured in details. Her face went pale when I told her Caroline had been in contact with someone else, someone she called M. Julia whispered one thing: find Enim. Don't waste time dragging Daniel through the mud. At the door, I reached for the handle, only to have it swing open. A man filled the frame, broad-shouldered, steady voice. Mark, Julia's husband. He nodded politely, but his eyes lingered too long, as if he was trying to place me. I'd seen that face before, not here, on the road, in passing. A car, headlights, a driver who stared back too long. As I walked to my car, the air felt sharper, colder. My hand was tight around my pen without realizing it. Mark wasn't an answer, but he was a face I couldn't shake. I went back to the office to map up my theories. I pinned Caroline's photo to the corkboard, then Daniel's, then Julia's. Lines between them formed a web. At the center, Caroline. At the edge, that dark sedan. The driver's eyes meeting mine. That wasn't random. A sharp knock broke the stillness. I stayed put. An envelope slid under the door, quick and practiced. Inside, a single sheet, typewritten, 2 words. Stop digging. The phone buzzed. An unlisted number. One text before the line went dead. Stop digging, Cassandra. She's already dead. I stared at the board until the lamp's hum felt like a clock ticking down. Every line pointed to one truth. Whoever M was, they weren't far. And when someone tells me not to look, I only dig deeper. I got the call just after sunrise. Daniel's voice was rough. No performance left, only the thing itself. There's something here, something you should see. I told him I'd be there. When he opened the door, he looked raw. Shirt wrinkled, collar open, the neat grief from our first meeting gone. He led me straight to the study and set a small bundle on the desk. Caroline's leather journal, edges softened from handling. Tucked inside the back flap was an envelope, thin, unmarked, and a motel key rattled against it. 6. It was the first concrete road on a map that had been mostly smoke. The motel was worse than I remembered. Flickering sign, rain-slick asphalt, that smell of bleach and old cigarettes. Room 6 sat at the far end of the second floor, the exact room I'd poked at from the outside days before. This time the lock gave. The room looked staged, bed made too neat, cups stacked, television off, not lived in, preserved. A drawer hid an envelope, taped flat behind the motel Bible. Inside were photos, Caroline in the store, crossing a street, standing on her own porch. The angles were invasive, long shots from distance, one too close image taken almost from the passenger side of a car. Someone had followed her, watched. Photographs don't lie. People do. Behind the dresser, I found a cheap burner phone. I powered it with gloves on. The message strings read like a script from the last act unknown. Rooms ready. Don't let anyone see you. Caroline, I'm scared. What if he finds out? Unknown. He won't. Just do as I say. Caroline, and if he does? Unknown. Then it won't be your problem anymore. 1 unread. Stop waiting. It's time. The timestamp froze me. 4 hours before Caroline's disappearance. I was halfway through my notes when headlights cut the lot. A dark sedan idled across the asphalt. Lights off. Silhouette behind glass. The same car. The same slow patience. The driver stepped out, crossed the lot, and the door to room 6 opened. Broad shoulders. Familiar set to the jaw. Mark. He didn't look surprised to see me. He did, however, look like a man expecting answers he'd already half guessed. I didn't waste words. He gave me the important part without theatrics. A couple weeks before the disappearance, he'd followed Caroline, not for malice, out of worry. She'd driven out past the interstate, into a row of storage units, stayed inside almost 20 minutes, then come out empty-handed and looking over her shoulder. He'd wanted to know what she was hiding. His confession fit into the map I was building. Storage payments, a key, photos, a burner phone with M's last lethal push. Mark was steady, not frantic. That steadiness could be innocent, or it could be practice, worth noting, worth watching. I couldn't sleep after the motel. Evidence spread across my desk like a constellation. The journal and key, the photos, the burner and its last message, marks tailing of Caroline, the storage payments, puzzle pieces, some jagged, some fitting too neatly. So I called Daniel. He answered on the third ring, voice low. Cassandra? I told him what I'd found, photos, a burner, proof she'd been paying to keep things out of sight. Silence sat on the line long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then he said, "Meet me in the morning. There's something I should give you." He was waiting at the cafe with a box on the chair beside him, like it had been guarding whatever sleep he could steal. Daniel's eyes were bloodshot but determined. He pushed the box toward me without ceremony. "When I went through her things," he said, voice low, "I set this aside. I didn't know why, until now. Inside, a scarf, a stack of worn notes, a hair clip I recognized from photos. At the bottom, a ring of keys. One key bore the stamp of a storage company. Keys are promises. Cold and literal in my palm, theirs meant someone kept something out of sight. The storage facility sat like an afterthought at the edge of town, rows of metal doors under a flat gray sky. The lock clicked like reluctance when I opened Caroline's unit. Dust, cardboard, the faint chemical tang of a place that had held secrets for a while. Bankers' boxes labeled in Caroline's careful script. A garment bag crumpled in a corner. A fireproof safe tucked low, stubborn. The boxes weren't filled with keepsakes. They were records, medical bills, letters, receipts, cataloged with the method of someone compiling proof rather than memories. One folder had a photo clipped to the front that stopped my breath. Caroline, a bruise ghosting her wrist, another along her cheek. In her handwriting across the margin, "Don't forget." The safe fought me until the fourth key found the wafer. Inside, a flip phone, older and patient, a flash drive, an envelope, sealed and labeled in a hand I knew as Caroline's, sharp, urgent. Across the front, one letter, M. The flip phone lit like a dying star. A single thread of messages scrolled up the screen. M. You've had enough chances. If you don't end this, I will. Timestamp. 3 days before she vanished. The envelope was worse. The paper crackled when I unfolded it. Caroline's script. Fast. Raw. If you're reading this, I couldn't stop her. She doesn't want me here. Says I ruined Daniel. She watches me. Every time I think I'm alone, she finds a way to remind me I'm not. If something happens, it wasn't Daniel. Don't believe that. It's her. It's always been her. At the bottom, one final line jagged as a cut. Margaret did it. For a beat, the world narrowed. The name sat there, 2 syllables that turned a puzzle into an accusation. Margaret. Who was Margaret? That evening I met Daniel at his house. His eyes searched mine until I dropped the envelope on the counter. He unfolded it with deliberate hands, jaw tightening at every line, until he snapped it shut. Denial fought in his voice, but the letter spoke for itself. Caroline hadn't been confused. She'd been leaving a trail. I slid the flash drive into my laptop. The glow of the screen washed the kitchen pale. Daniel's hand tapped restlessly against the counter as the first video flickered on. Caroline on the couch, Margaret storming into frame, her grip yanking Caroline upright by the wrist. The stumble, the wince, the forming bruise, all caught on camera. The next clip, Caroline cornered in the kitchen, Margaret's shove pinning her to the counter, her voice breaking as she cried out. The third, Caroline at the door, bag in hand, only to be blocked, keys snatched, Margaret's face twisted in rage, her voice clear even through the grain. "If you don't leave, I'll make you. You're no good for my son." Daniel's color drained. His fists trembled against the counter. By the time the screen froze on Margaret's face, he couldn't speak. He just stared, gutted. When he finally did, his voice was hollow. "I thought I could keep them apart." I didn't think she'd do this. Silence weighed heavier than denial ever could. But when I pressed him, he admitted Margaret had always kept places locked away. Cabinets in the basement, rooms she guarded, storage she called family things. He never looked. Until now. He called Julia himself. Her arrival was silent but tense. She saw his face and didn't ask questions. The drive to Margaret's was suffocating. Rain streaked the windshield like a clock counting down. Daniel's hands never unclenched from the wheel. Julia sat rigid in the back. Margaret opened the door before we knocked, composed and waiting. The smile she gave was cold enough to cut. Daniel didn't waste words. He shoved past her, dropped Caroline's letter on the table. The mask never slipped, not until he told her he'd seen the videos. For 1 second, shock broke through, raw and unguarded. Then the house itself seemed to listen. A faint creak above, the attic cord dangling in the hallway. Julia whispered that Caroline had always said the attic made her skin crawl. Margaret snapped too quickly. "There's nothing up there." Daniel pulled the cord anyway. The ladder screeched open, spilling dust. The attic yawned black above us. Inside, the air reeked of bleach and dust. Daniel's flashlight cut across boxes, then froze on photographs plastered over rafters. Caroline, everywhere. At the market, in her car, walking, sitting unaware, catalogued and dated. Surveillance, not memory. And in the center, a chair, bolted to the floor, rope frayed and stiff, stains dark in the wood. "This isn't just where she watched her," Daniel whispered. "It's where she kept her." A scrape shifted above us. Eyes glinted back for a breath, then vanished into shadow. Footsteps rose from below. Not Margaret. Not yet. The man from the motel emerged first, pipe in hand, his grin cold. Recognition twisted my gut. He'd been there all along. And then Margaret appeared behind him, sharp and venomous, turning her rage on her own son. "I saved you. She would have destroyed you." The attic became a cage. The man lunged. Daniel blocked him and took the hit. I swung the flashlight hard, sent the pipe clattering. The struggle cracked across the rafters. Margaret grabbed the pipe, swung wild, shrieking she had done it all for Daniel. He caught her wrist mid-swing, his voice breaking on the word, "Mother." The cuffs snapped cold around both of them before the night could spill more blood. Margaret collapsed, sobbing into rage while her accomplice cursed under steel. And then, muffled, above us, a thump, another ladder hidden higher in the beams. I climbed first, the air staler, tighter. My light found her. Caroline, bound, trembling, eyes wide but alive. Her whisper broke the attic open. "Daniel?" He fell to his knees beside her, pulling her into his arms as I tore the ropes free. Julia's sob choked into silence. Below, Margaret screamed, feral, her accomplice thrashing uselessly. Sirens split the air, red and blue slicing through the attic slats. Officers swarmed, taking them into custody as Margaret spat venom. "She poisoned my son. I won't let her have him." Caroline's voice cut through, hoarse but steady. "She watched me every day, said I didn't deserve him, that if I left, she'd end it herself. But she was alive, her heartbeat steady against Daniel's shoulder. Not a trail, Not a note, not a whisper. Alive. On the way out, I explained to the officers how Margaret orchestrated it, boxing Caroline in on the back road, her male accomplice taking her away, sliding behind the wheel herself so neighbors thought nothing was wrong, freezing doorbell cameras long enough to cover her entry. A disappearance hidden in plain sight. By dawn, Margaret and her accomplice were booked, charges stacked high. Bail denied. I watched them led away, Margaret's chin high in defiance, but the truth wrapped tight around her wrists. Caroline walked out beside Daniel, fragile but steady, Julia's arm looped through hers. Relief clung to her face like the first breath after drowning. For once, they weren't moving in Margaret's shadow. They were walking out of it. I pinned the last photograph to my board, drew a final line, and closed the notebook. That's what I like to call checkmate. If you're still here, you're one of the curious ones. Stick around. The next mystery's already waiting.